All right. All right.
Jael means wild gazelle or wild goat. Certainly a suitable name for a woman from a nomadic tribe. Jael lived and became famous as a warrior woman of God during the biblical history associated with the other warrior princess, Deborah, who was a judge for Israel. But Jael was a commoner. She was actually one of many wives to the husband that she had married. Her husband's name was Heber. Jael was a tent dweller. She and her family were known as tinsmiths, who made farming utensils, domestic items, and weapons. They traveled whenever they could find work. Her campsite must have been close to the battlefield where Sisera and the children of Israel, under the leadership of Deborah, were engaged in a battle. And because of the location of her camp, her family was making and supplying weapons for the army. Through her husband Heber, Jael had kinship ties with the Israelites. Heber was descended from Jethro, who had been the father of Moses' wife. So Jael was bound to the Israelites by kinship obligations. Nevertheless, Heber, who, being a sensible businessman if ever there was one, was on good terms with both sides of the conflict, and that is the Canaanites and the Israelites. So Sisera, who was leading the campaign against the Israelites and who was under the leadership at that time of Deborah, saw the encampment of Jael and Heber as a refuge. Now, this hard-working, meek, married woman, who was soon to be known as a great warrior woman of God, had her own tent, and it was separate from her husband's tent. You may say, whoa, her husband's tent and hers were separate dwellings. Well, during that period of time, as it is in many other countries now, the wife of a man who had more than one wife would have her own tent, and she would make it, she would pitch it, and she would maintain it herself. And if she had children, they would live with her in her tent. There is a similarity between the boy who became king, known as King David, and the wife, mother, named Jael, who became known as a great woman warrior of Israel. Here are some of those similarities, and understand that these are just some that we look at and we say, hey, this is really neat. Now, number one, both of them were physically weak and smaller than their opponent. 2, both of them employed unusual weapons. 3, both of them used their wits rather than orthodox military methods. And then there's a fourth one, which is both of them exacted bloody slaughter on their enemies. David hacking off the head of Goliath, and Jael piercing Sisera's skull with a nail. Here's how Jael became known as a great warrior, a great woman, female warrior of Israel, a great woman warrior of God. One point to notice is that Sisera, who was the leader of the opposing forces to Israel, went into Jael's tent, not the tent of Heber, her husband. The ancient laws of hospitality in the Middle East were very strict. A guest, once ritually invited into the home, had to be protected and cared for, even at the expense of everyone else in the house. But only the chief man of the household could offer ritual hospitality. Jael offered help to a fleeing enemy general, but not ritual hospitality. Sisera went into Jael's tent. She covered him with a rug, which actually suggests that he was afraid. He was fleeing, of course, and wanted to hide. He asked her for water. She gave him a drink of goat's milk. Now, him being exhausted from the battle and his running, his flight, after he took that drink, he fell asleep. What happened next is perhaps one of the most graphically described murders in the Hebrew Scripture. Jael, being faced, as are many of the blessed and anointed women of God are today, faced with a man who was far superior to her in physical strength, Jael used her wits and courage. She took the wooden hammer which was used to put up her tent and one of the steel pegs that held the tent ropes. Then, with one expert blow, she drove the peg deep into the side of Sisera's head. Now, we don't know the exact reason that Jael killed Sisera. We don't know what happened in that tent, but one thing we do know, and that is she was bound by kinship to do all she could do to help win the war against the enemies of Israel that were being led by Sisera. Now, because this man, this general, was one of the top people, one of the top generals in the forces that were campaigning against Israel, she, that is Jael, became an instant heroine. She became an instant hero, and the Israelites celebrated her from that point until now. And her, together with Deborah, had saved them from their mortal enemies. They also relished the irony of the situation, that Sisera, the mighty general, fell not into Barak's hands, but Jael's. Now, you know Barak, that was the army general that Deborah, the leader of the Israelites, had placed in charge of her forces. Barak had ran and hid because he was scared. So you got this male-female thing going on again right there, and that is that Sisera, the mighty general, fell not into Barak's hands, but Jael. And from that day until this very day, Jael will forever be known as a mighty woman warrior of God.